Willkommen in der Sentinel Bay zur ersten Spezialausgabe von Humans and Robots. Spezial deshalb, weil es kein klassisches Humans and Robots Interview ist, so wie ihr das bisher kennt aus dieser Serie, sondern es ist ein Komplettmitschnitt von der TFNation 2019 des Diskussionspanels rund um die IDW Comic Saga Infiltration. Und die Gäste waren der Autor der ganzen Serie, nämlich Simon Furman, absolute Legende eigentlich für Transformers Comic-Fans. Und die beiden Zeichner Su, der viele Sachen oder viele der Designs gemacht hat, die gerade ich bei IDW wirklich am meisten liebe. Stichwort Sunstreaker, Stichwort Jazz, also diese ganzen geupdateten Fahrzeugmodi zum Beispiel. Das hat ein paar sehr spannende Sachen dazu gesagt. Dann ist mit dabei Nick Roche, der dann irgendwann als Zeichner bei den Spotlights mit eingestiegen ist und dann hinterher auch später allerdings erst Last Stand of the Wreckers zum Beispiel entworfen hat. Und es ist dabei Kris, einer der Koloristen für diese Serie. Und ja, die vier tauschen sich ein bisschen aus über die Geschichte von Infiltration, wie die Sachen so zustande kamen. Und ich hoffe, ihr habt ein bisschen Spaß. Das ist wie gesagt das gesamte Panel von A bis Z. Ich habe da jetzt nicht großartig kommentiert, aber ich wollte das für euch irgendwie archivieren und genießbar machen. Von daher wünsche ich euch jetzt erstmal viel Spaß.
So, first of all, the architect behind the Infiltration saga, Mr. Simon Furman. Next up, and I'm delighted to say it's his first appearance at the UK Transformers convention, arguably a man who revolutionised the look of Transformers comics, Suche. Next up, some Irishmen we found hovering near the bar, begging for scraps. Nick Roche. And last but not least, a cheerful Welsh representative, providing colours for many things, Mr. Kris. So, probably have to take you back to the bygone year of 2005 when Dreamwave Publications went under and Transformers, which had been riding high, sort of vanished. So, Simon, when IDW got the license, did they come to you very quickly or had you made yourself available to them beforehand?
It started actually slightly before IDW got the license. This was sort of post-Dreamwave and we were all waiting slightly with bated breath to see which company, I think there were several in the running for it, who would actually pick up the license. But I got contacted by Kris before their sort of final pitch went in to Hasbro, and we talked a lot about what we thought we might do with the license, how we could reboot it or restart it. I think everybody was aware we couldn't take up any of the Dreamwave storylines, which in a way was a shame, but it did give a complete fresh start approach. And some of the things we talked about whether we could do a kind of, we called it Crisis on Infinite Cybertrons, where all sorts of Transformers realities get crushed into a new streamlined verse. But we thought that had also too much baggage with it and might be off-putting for just brand new readers who were picking up the franchise and giving it a chance. So we then just said, well, let's take it right back to the basics of the story. Really, just to say this is the beginning of everything, but not set it in 1984, set it in 2005, and bring everything up to speed with a little sort of fresh coat of paint, a new spin on the robots in disguise, and really Infiltration as a title, as a approach came out of that. Well, let's rationalise this. Let's look at what these characters are and say, well, look, they disguise themselves. So, in the original Marvel series, it had been they were fighting on planet Earth and fully visible within the first few pages, more or less. But we said, well, look, these are covert robots. They disguise themselves. maybe land on a planet, adopt some kind of native disguise, and then move about unseen. So the whole idea of infiltration was just to say they really are robots in disguise. They do not come and announce their presence. They infiltrate. And of course that led us to the fact that, you know, the Decepticons were the real infiltration force, and the Autobots were the catch-up, stop them getting their sort of tendrils deep into the planet, and that we came up with this whole staged plan for the infiltration and then the next stages of this sort of colonization and conquering. So, you know, we just talked this through, me and Kris, and then really I think, you know, it was just getting, after we'd settled on that and IDW had presented their pitch to Hasbro and got the license, then it was very much getting the look right of this reboot and not making it seem retro, and I think that's really where EJ comes in with the look and feel of it.
So how quickly were you involved in from pitch to going on? Was it a quick process, or did they sort of go, did you have to sort of test out for it and say, what are you going to bring to Transformers?
For me, I actually started way before Dreamwave even got started. Back then, me and a group of people, we were trying to get a license as well, and we were in the running with Dreamwave, but we didn't get the license. Robert Kerman was supposed to be writing that series, really, but then we didn't get the license. So, but Hasbro liked our stuff, so we did a lot of stuff for Hasbro. I think that's where Chris Ryle found my artwork and then contacted me and got me on the project. For me, the whole point of designing Transformer was to retain the authenticity of the G1 look, but with the updated cars, and hopefully we accomplished that.
You did.
I think it's safe to say you did. Would you agree?
EJ's right, it was a fine balancing act to try and get it updated without losing the essential look of the characters, and that's where that sort of, you know, we could have tipped too far into, we didn't want to change the characters, but at the same time we wanted to say from the start, these are the characters you know, but there's a different spin on them. You know, it's not just their appearance. We wanted everybody to be faithful to those original bios and tech specs that Bob Budiansky and Marvel dreamed up, but we wanted to put a completely different spin on the characters and the storyline. So we had almost like a watch phrase, which was, if it's been done before one way, we do it differently. And that's how we set out with all the storytelling, all the spotlights, all the, you know, the mini-series, was to say, it is jazz, it is proud, but there's a difference, there's a slight different spin to their character, or something fundamental about them that's just different for this IDW iteration.
So, AJ, your work is pretty much, there's a sea change in Transformers art before you and after you, and the vehicle won't seem to have such a consideration in terms of they actually look like they can transform from the robot to the car mode. There was, in the Marvel era, a bit of fudging to go with the animation models that were the basis. So, how long was the design process for these characters, getting from, say, looking at the Arctic truck for an Optimus Prime to get to something that still looked like Prime?
Well, my background is in industrial design, so to me, everything needs to follow. We have a good saying is form follows function. Function is more important than you know, the look of it. So to me, whenever I design a transformer, I want something to transform from car and taking all the part of the car and divide it up into different pieces and, you know, fit it on a robot and still having the, you know, the right proportion of the car pieces. So essentially when I'm designing, I want to design a toy rather than design something just for the flat pages. You know, that's how I approach my designs.
Nice.
But I seem to remember EJ's original designs were always three-dimensional. You know, they weren't just, you know, that's front and back. They had that element of the turnaround already built into them. You know, you could see how they looked from every angle, and it was, you know, I mean, you know, the Dreamwave approach had been, you know, somewhat, I suppose, flashier than, you know, and this was far more sort of fundamentally these characters you could believe, literally from piece to piece, they transformed and then they would actually blend in from one mode to the next, and that's what EJ brought to it, that we said, look, we want Megatron still to be a gun, we still want to walk the P, whatever it is, but we want a new model of that. We want F-16s instead of F-14s. And EJ just rose to the challenge every time of saying, okay, yep, I can keep that fundamental character, it'll still look like Megatron, but it's, you know, the old mode is updated and reimagined somewhat.
So Simon, once EJ's on board, what sort of influence does it have on your story at that stage? Because obviously you're probably still outlining or getting the script together, so it's not entirely finalised.
Well, with Infiltration issue 0, I think it was the first and only time I saw your pencil artwork, because, you know, Kris was keen, we saw all stages of it, Kris Ryle. So, you know, and really, once we'd seen EJ's pencils and then inks and finishes on Infiltration 0, we just didn't need to see the pencils anymore. So I think, you know, I've still got somewhere a lot of the, I think in fact in the definitive G1 collection, we put a lot of some of EJ's issue 0 pencils in there, and you know, it was the first and only time we needed to see them, because it became rapidly clear that, you know, he had a sort of total grasp of everything on the page, and I think after that we just barely, you know, he just went straight to sort of the finished art. So it was great to see, but right away we could see we were kind of, we were on the same page with it, and that was really nice, because we'd never worked together before, but that kind of creative, I hate that word, but synergy was right from the start. We just, you know, it clicked, and then we didn't really have to kind of second guess anything about infiltration or escalation, because I just knew EJ could handle whatever I asked for, really, in terms of the characters and the story. So, and you know, and also the human characters. You know, it's not always a given that Transformers, you know, artists who are good at robots aren't necessarily good at human beings, but again, right away, EJ got our human characters. And, you know, we went through some variations on Verity, I seem to remember, of, you know, we suggested, you know, I had to literally do some, you know, look at what was around for, you know, teenage female fashion. So it was a strange research for me, but we sent EJ some ideas for Verity's look, and then he just did his thing with that. And then after that, again, I didn't bother with that kind of stage, because, you know, it was clear that EJ could just handle all elements of this very grounded, very human level story, which was a big plus.
That's it. If I could just say something, just as a falling fanboy over EJ Sue, like we're talking about like he's dead. Remember EJ Sue? God, he was so good. But because what Simon was saying, the way EJ talks about his own work about, like, you know, function and form and the engineering background, and yes, he obviously works out the physics of the Transformers, but as Simon is saying, not even just drawing humans, like EJ's storytelling was second to none. It wasn't just the fact that the engineering stuff was spot on. It was the panel-to-panel, like, storytelling, like the way that it flowed, the framing, like, you know, the Thundercracker, that double-page spread, and that fight scene and escalation. I mean, like, there's lots of artists out there who could draw some cool looking robots in the snow, looking menacing and stuff, but having the action follow and and then just the emotions kind of with the human characters as well. It was like he was just the right man for the job. Still
and also he also likes to draw his own sound effects onto the page, which I think is just fantastic.
Yeah, we love you, EJ.
Thank you.
And it's funny that, the other sort of model when we were starting Infiltration was to look at the Marvel Ultimate line, Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men, which took a much slower, more sort of modern comics approach to the storyline. So we wanted that pacing as well with Infiltration, which wasn't just like page 15, all the robots have turned up and introduced themselves and are fighting. We did want that build-up of the series to evolve, but they start with the human perspective and then just gradually. So, we took that fairly bold approach of not putting the giant robots transforming all over the place straight away. You don't see, I think, until the end of maybe issue 1 with Runabout and Run Amok, you actually see the robots as opposed to the vehicles. And it was, I think it's an approach that holds up well, but of course at the time we were starting to get the feedback like, well, where are the robots? Where's our giant robots fighting? So that was when Kris, Ryle and I started talking about what can we do? We don't want to change tack with the Asians. We want that to just keep unfolding, keep literally escalating every mini-series. So at that point was when we started talking about Stormbringer and the Spotlights. And then everybody would have the best of all worlds. So this, it wasn't a plan going in, it just evolved based on that, quite early wave of feedback via the internet we were getting.
And the Spotlights where you come in, Nick, almost, because you kind of sneaked in the door a little bit first with a pandering caricature of the editor.
That's the only way to get work in comics. Don't believe any of these seedy stories that you hear. Just draw a cartoon of the editor and they'll give you a job. It's as simple as that. Yeah, Spotlights.
The Spotlight Shockwave first of all, so as an old school Marvel UK fanboy.
Yeah, it's okay. It was interesting. Yeah, I had started. Someone asked me to sign a Beast Wars comic about half an hour ago and had like a cover date of the artwork had been drawn in 2005. It was the first time ever that the year 2005 felt like so long ago, because as Transformers fans, the year 2005 will always feel like the future. But it's like nearly 15 years ago. And so yeah, I got work doing. I did an alternate cover for Infiltration issue 1. I did. And so Kris was kind of got me doing some covers, so I did some for their reprints, the old Marvel reprints, and then some of their Beast Wars series. But he sort of said, as soon as we get a chance, we'll put you on interiors. And then, they started the Spotlight series. Big Marvel UK fan, big Simon fan, and but genuinely never really a big Shockwave fan. So I wasn't disappointed with the draw, but I was sort of like, I'm just happy to be working, And then now ever since I'm sort of like Shockwave is my baby, I'm just gonna have Shockwave all day and all night in every shape, form, and size. But yeah, it was weird. And going back to something that Simon said about, and it's true. Like I tried to follow it whenever I was writing stuff for IDW. It was been done before. Don't do it again or do it a different way. But out of everything that was done, it felt like. Only now I realised the Spotlight Shockwave was probably the closest thing to mirror something that had happened before, in that it was Shockwave versus Dinobots sort of thing. Obviously it ended up taking off in different directions, the Dinobots were vastly different, and that issue ended up becoming almost the issue 0 for the IDW universe in some ways, kind of retroactively it kind of became. But no, it was huge. That was where I first used the phrase trouser shattering, because someone asked me what it was like to sort of, work with Simon, and I said, well, I get emails from Simon Furman. It's like a trouser shattering experience. Like I said, this was nearly 15 years ago, so that novelty is very much wild. To the point that Simon and I have seen each other almost like every other weekend in the summer. It feels like through conventions, but having said that, I often forget that from knowing Simon as well as I do now, and like it's a big treat to have EJ here, so that's a big novelty. But like going back to Infiltration, you were talking about it, Andy, and said I'm getting properly. I'd love to read Infiltration again now. I'm not just there running. that's such a good setup, you know. It's kind of, I'd love to, you know, to see robots in disguise done with the kind of tenacity that the guys did it. But anyway, I'm on spotlights. That's where we are on Facebook now. Spotlights.
I mean, it was interesting with the spotlights. And Stormbringer, it gave us a chance to step back and say, well, okay, this is where the situation is now. But what, you know, start to see that idea of what had happened on Cybertron in the past, what had gone wrong, what was the current status of Cybertron, you know, where did these you know, at the time it was just War 13, but it did suggest that there were other experimental wars out there. So we just, you know, it gave us that chance to step back and start to look at the bigger picture of the whole state of the Civil War and the past of Cybertron. So it opened it up really from there and allowed us to do both those things, of push the Earth story forwards while start to develop the backstory.
I would say one of the things that I was glad about with Spotlight Shockwave is this is my first ever full-time like interior comic work. I've been doing covers for IDW for close to a year at that stage, but this is my chance to, your dream come true. You're working in comics, you're working on your favourite comic with your favourite writer and your favourite characters. It's, you know, don't mess this up. But even at that, I always had kind of a, not confidence, but kind of, I felt I had an idea of what I thought my Transformers would look like if I ever got a chance to do them professionally. But then EJ comes along and it's sort of like, oh god, you know, there's just huge shoes to kind of follow. But at the same time, I was glad that I didn't have to do what EJ was doing. I didn't have to kind of like do something set on Earth, work on realistic alt modes. Like in the script, Simon mentions that the Dinobots, they have like biological alt modes and sort of kind of think Beast Wars. And it's like, right, I can do that. But even then, I find myself like, you know, trying to think like as realistically or as workable as possible. Like, how can these dinosaurs really transform? And you know, working doubly hard on kind of the character designs and the transformations than way more than I definitely would have when it came to more BCI, you know. So it's
but you can see with your version of Swoop,
yeah,
that was very much an obviously Nick Roche design.
Yeah,
sorry about that. But at the same time, because obviously Swoop being a pterodactyl, he's going to be a lot smaller than Dinobots, and you can see that you've worked that into the design ethos as well.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned Swoops, especially because my thing, especially when it ultimately came to more BCI, is that stage I sort of kind of had a bit more confidence in my own stuff and kind of how I felt I could draw Transformers. But I always kind of think of character design first and how about the shape and kind of body type and body language of a character could tell you a little bit about them. And so, especially with the Dinobots, that they're 5 characters who have often kind of look roughly the same sort of mass. And I kind of want each one to have their own sort of silhouette, and especially the Soupy, smaller, alt mode. So I remember Simon being a little bit like, could you beef them up a little bit? Yeah, sure. I think I did it for one panel, and then I sort of just went back to. I think even Simon said something. I think his ankles look like they're going to snap. And then I think as years went by, I was sort of like just became more. I leaned into that side of things a bit more. But yeah, that was my way of thinking as logically as I could, you know. But again, you know, I'm not sure. I'm still standing in the shadows, you know.
And obviously, Kris, you come in doing spotlights as well.
I did, yeah. I sort of came in, I did 3 pages as a fill-in for Devastation at the very end. The colours for that had moved on, and Josh Bertram had taken over. And there was a massive time crunch at the end of Devastation. And I just remember coming in, I got to colour Grimlock, which obviously was based off your design. And I was just following on the heels of Josh, and I was like, oh god, you know, I love Josh as a colourist. And it was looking at his stuff that made me want to colour. So to get actually on the Devastation and fill in, there's only 3 pages, but it's still, you know, an in. And then those 3 pages led to Spotlight RC, because Spotlight RC had fallen behind, and Alex was drawing that, and Josh Perez was colouring it. So there was 12 pages to do, or 11 pages. It's about half the issue. So they said to me, well, you seem to work quite quick. Can you catch up on RC? And I was like, yeah, because you know I didn't want to turn down work because you never know when the next job's coming in. So they said, yeah, I'll happily do RC. And they were like, okay, well, Alex is going to be drawing it. And I was like, oh shit, because you know Alex likes to draw detail, and I don't like to colour detail. So, and I, who's colouring this? I said, oh, it's Josh Perez. I said, oh So I was trying to kind of match my colouring to Josh, and Josh is just like a different level of colourist. So I think I managed to kind of, if you squint at it in a darkened room, you can kind of believe it's sort of the same. But I did the 12 pages for RC, and off the back of that, at the time, I think Kris was no longer editing it. He was like editor-in-chief, I think. And then was it Dan Taylor? Yeah, Dan Taylor was sort of interim at that point and doing some stuff. And then it was sort of being handed over to Denton. And I think whenever there's an editorial change of title, people do want to, editors want to kind of put their own stamp on things creatively. And as it turns out, I'd been kind of dealing with Denton a lot. And he was overseeing the start of the spotlights that were going to become revelations. And I think I was just in the right place at the right time, and I'd proven I could work quite quickly. And he was like, do you want to, they came to me and said, do you want to colour EJ's work on Cyclonus? And I was trying to play all cool, like, yeah, that's fine. And inside I was kind of like, of course! So when Nick talked about like the trouser shattering moments, I started getting emails from Simon and EJ, and I was kind of like, this is great. I'm working, I'm on the books, and this is fantastic. And Cyclonus went down quite well, and it was really fun to work on. It was just a real blast, and we got that done on time. And as that was going ahead, Denton said, do I want to colour Hardhead? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to. Who's drawing Hardhead? Nick. Yeah, and I was just
I'm interested.
No, that's charlatan. So that led to that, and then I was supposed to colour Double Dealer, and I was hoping at this point, oh my god, I could do the entire Revelation saga. This would be amazing. But then I think the Hardhead got a little bit tight deadline-wise.
All right.
Yeah.
Micromasters.
Yeah. I think we should just both blame Simon for that.
Oh, I did.
Yeah. That was
on Maximum Dynamite, I was blaming Simon for putting in all the Sunstreaker clones, and for EJ for designing that Sunstreaker design. So
but I do remember getting
no responsibility for here at all.
I do remember getting the script for Hardhead, and like you scroll through it first of all to see what you're going to draw, what you're going to colour, and each page was just more and more micromasters, and I was thinking, oh my god, Nick's got to draw these, and then in the back of my head I was like, well, hang on, you got to colour these. Oh god, no. But we got it in the end, but it did mean I was hoping to colour the third spotlight, which was going to be Double Dealer, but I didn't get a chance to do that, so Liam took over that one. But while Liam was colouring that, I remember I emailed Denton and said, well, if I can't colour Double Dealer, can I colour Sideswipe? And Denton just kind of went, well, we've got plans for Sideswipe. And then it goes, some of the artwork comes in, and EJ's like drawn and painted Sideswipe. And I remember seeing those pages come in, and it was just kind of like, I'm glad I didn't colour that book, because
I bet EJ was hoping that you would come and help with those.
But I remember we were in the middle of Hardhead, and I think you started Spotlight Sideswipe, and because you needed so much time to paint every panel, but man, it paid off. It looked fantastic.
I don't know, I think I wrote one of my first fan letters after Sideswipe. I think I sent it to Simon. I shouldn't be sending it to EJ, obviously, but I was like, but it was just because it felt like reading that Spotlight side of it made me feel like I was like 9 again, you know what I mean? And it's just like a packed Furman finale, and it just looked gorgeous. Like it was just, and it's the first kind of fully painted Transformers strip. It's just kind of, I don't know. I can see why it was your last issue for a while. Like, see ya.
Winding back to the spotlights a little bit, so Cyclonus, from the IDW there's been a lot of redesigns of characters along the years, but Cyclonus has pretty much stayed the course right the way through from your first design, which obviously quite intimidating for the artists to follow, but what were your cues for that?
I'm really surprised when I see Cyclonus still haven't changed after all these years. It says a lot about all the great artists that came before and between my work. I'm really thankful that nobody has changed it. When we first working on the Spotlight Cyclonus, I actually emailed Simon to ask him if he wanted redesigned. But Simon said, no, we'll just keep it, keep it G1. But, because I had this great idea about Cyclonus being an ancient transformer, and I needed for him to look more older design, like it's designed in the older time. So I really had these great ideas that I want to throw it out for Cyclonus, and I want these more like zombie-like robot and less emotional robots, because it's an older model of these transformers. So I threw out my design back at Simon and I don't know who the editor at the time.
It must have been Denton, I think, maybe.
And they love it, so we went with that design. My inspiration is having throwing a lot of Japanese armor design, and a lot of his facial feature. I got inspiration from the Japanese Omni mask, and you know, I thought there's a synergy between that look and a Cyclonus being an undead. So that's how, you know, my design came to be.
It's true, Cyclonus has been around so long now as a character, you kind of forget until you just reminded us basically that they're from the Dead universe. You know, obviously that was a big design cue there. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
There was no design thought for the colours, I just copied the toy.
Yeah, you did a good job. Yeah. Simon was pretty happy with that, who sort of, stop, don't bother me with these questions. Yeah, just keep it the same. Just one G1 as well.
So we kind of talked a little bit about books falling behind with things. So in terms of the process for you guys, what's the monthly turnaround for trying to get, I know the books should be monthly, but we know that deadlines get, and colourists are usually at the end of it.
Yeah, it meant I had to do a lot of hard work to get all these artists going, and in the vague hope that it would gel together into a 4-issue mini-series or something. But no, I mean, you know, it's always difficult. I mean, it's much easier to write a Transformers comic than it is to draw it, because I can easily say, yes, there's 60 Micromasters running around on this planet, and it takes me a second to write that, and Nick's probably just cursing my name for weeks.
I was okay with the Micromasters at that stage, but I was still having PTSD after the Sunstreaker clones, you see, so it was kind of... Yeah, no, actually they came afterwards, didn't they? I had no idea what I was facing into. I was, like, Maximum Dynamite was my first series, so I was kind of... I can't keep making excuses and stuff, but it's all these firsts do end up being a learning curve. And so kind of like pacing myself and kind of, you know, maybe drawing literally, you know, you can cut corners and still keep it looking good, you know, you kind of, you know, silhouettes are great. And I wasn't very Photoshop proficient then, that would have helped. And so, yeah, it would have been good. But at least we got 12 pages of James Ray doing Maximum Dynamite, so that's my gift to you guys. But it's weird because I was rooting out some Maximum Dynamite pages and stuff, and it's weird if you, I don't know if anyone else feels that, but when you handle old artwork or something that you drew like 10 or 15 years ago, you're right back in whatever chair you were drawing in, and you remember what music you were listening to, you remember the weather was like very much outside where you were very much not. And yeah, so it was weird. I remember just like looking at the pages like last week and just going, a young man drew these. A young man who was trying to prove something.
So with obviously the Spotlight Sideswipe, PG, was it always planned for you to paint it, or was that just your decision? Yeah. So for Spotlight Sideswipe, at the end of the Revelation saga with it being fully painted, did you pitch the idea that you'd like to paint it, or did editors say, would you mind?
Well, at the time, I think it was started when, I think it was escalation when I had my first child. So I had to take a lot of time off from working. And as they, you know, demand more and more of my time, I was assuming that Spezial was going to be my last issue ever. So at the time, I thought I want to go out with a bang. So I asked Chris Ryle, if I could just color the whole thing. So he said, yeah, but I told him I need a lot of time. I need a very long deadline, and he agreed to it. And it was. I mean, the end result was. I'm happy with the end result, but when I was working on it, I was regretting it. Every page is pain in the ass. At the time, I had never painted a whole comic book before, not even a whole page before. So I was trying out different software, and I switched probably between 3-4 different software to see what my process would move a lot faster.
My chest is getting tight hearing you talk about this. It's just, oh God.
Yeah, I change process halfway, it's fine.
And I mean, it was a very, very good learning experience, I think.
Nothing teaches you like a deadline. So.
Correct. The deadlines push me forward, and it's hard to do at the same time because I have to take care of little babies.
Yeah, they don't do much to help themselves, do they? Kids. Was that Devastation that you had the babies? Was it, or was that was your second? Because I think me and Robbie Musso did 2 issues of Devastation. We did the 6-shot hot rod stuff. So I think there was babies involved that time because.
Yeah, I think there was a Devastation when my first baby was born.
Look at me telling you when your children were born. I was very grateful when your children were born because it meant I got to draw the big boy Transformers comic instead of those piddly spotlights they were throwing me. So
I'm grateful for all these great guys to come in and pick up the pieces.
We left it in an awful mess for you.
I mean, Revelation was a tough series because this was the time when IDW's plans were sort of changing for their next phase, and what I thought was going to be Revelation and Escalation, but Revelation, and there was another one after that, all had to be condensed, or some of it got put into Maximum Dinobots. Revelation itself went down from 6 issues to 4 issues, each of which had to be a character spotlight, and it just suddenly was like a major headache. And because it was going to different artists, they needed me to more or less write the first 3 issues in one go. So it was a real sort of murderous schedule for that one, and just logicking it out as to which characters should be the spotlight characters, what was never meant to be a spotlight themed issue. So it took some logistical and just thinking outside the box to try and make it into 4 spotlights, and then stuff that was going to be bubbling in the background of that got shunted into Maximum Dinobots, and everything more or less had to be wrapped up so that they could do their All Hail Megatron. So it was a real tough time, and not always the best time for me with my IDW writing, because it just felt like all the plans we had beyond Revelation had all been sort of accelerated and then revised somewhat. But I'm still really pleased with how Revelation came out, and some of the issues of Revelation are among my favourites of my IDW runs, because it pushes you the spotlights to say, you've still got to have a really solid character arc as well as whatever this ongoing strand is. And I really loved Nick's work on Hardhead, because it's got possibly my whole favourite little sequence of panels, which is when Hardhead gets shot in the head
that was great fun to watch.
And then there's a little sort of moment, and and then the shock of the fact that he's still alive, and he says hard hair, it's there in the name. But Nick drew it so perfectly, and it could have not been. It just could have, a different artist or someone who wasn't quite on the same page of it. So that end sequence, although it was somewhat tortuous at the time, has turned out some of almost the best, I think.
Well, it's interesting because one of your strengths is kind of working well under ridiculous pressure and constraints, and we're going to box you inside and then write your way out of it. And that's sometimes when you do some of your best work, but that's obviously, editors know that as well. They know that we can cut the legs out under this guy and he'll be fine. But we don't often, we've seen sort of a little bit lately, but we don't often get together and go, hey, aren't we great? But one of the two of the jobs that we both are happy with are Spotlight, Shockwave, and Hardhead,
Hardhead is a blast.
Yeah,
it was tough at the time, but it was.
But it's weird because it felt like it was its own. It felt like it was a good standalone Spotlight. It wasn't just connective tissue in that sort of series and stuff. Like I think on paper, I remember at the time I was thinking, I think I kind of would prefer to, but like to have done the double leader one because it ties in with Spotlight. But looking back, I think the Hardhead was the most spotlighty, and it gave me a lot of kind of fun things to do and kind of
Well, I think we can agree sort of with the camper of Sideswipe because no one else has decided to do a fully painted Transformers comics.
No. I remember when we were working on the Hardhead, because you were saying that we would have been seeing like pages from Sideswipe kind of as they were kind of coming in, and I just remember that so I think it was that first splash where he's got the glowing fist of doom Sideswipe, and we were all just like, I was saying to DJ earlier on as well, similarly when his Lost Light pages started coming in, it was like we were, like the people working on the books were like trading like cigarettes in prison, we were just passing around. Have you seen him draw the Lost Light characters? And we're so excited, sort of like, even the editors who, don't care. They do, but they don't get it, they're not fans in the same way, like they were just buzzing on the pages and writing stuff. And then we were the same, like seeing that painted Sideswipe, just the power of him and stuff. I think I find myself telling myself when I see other artists, I'm like, okay, well he's better at me than this, but at least I've got this. And then like EJ is just, again, talking about like it's his obituary, but it's just the, the fact that it's just that beautiful painted sort of like texture that we haven't seen in Transformers before. It's like, and not only can you do the technical stuff, but there's a real kind of human touch to your painted stuff, even the digital painted stuff. It looked we really hate you, Jim.
You can totally see the influence as well of that first splash page of Sideswipe on your cover for the Revelations.
Oh yeah,
you did the really kind of. I think.
Oh yeah, the kind of like Logan
thing.
Yeah.
I think at the time, I think we probably started to see a little bit of like Auto Megatron pro stuff going in.
Yeah.
And if you remember, Auto Megatron had those amazing propaganda style covers, and I think there's a lot of influence on those on some of the stuff. I remember you did your Hardhead cover as well. Had this kind of. It wasn't really kind of inky. It was all really abstract and kind of really kind of angular lines.
Yeah, there was. I think I did some of the propaganda stuff before they actually started doing the Trevor Hodges propaganda stuff. Kind of, and he's a proper designer, Trev, so it's kind of. But it was a weird thing because it was like, even though it's one publishing company and they were, we're all on the same side essentially, but it's a long time ago now, I can say it. But it definitely felt like there was a little bit of competition going on between kind of Team Asians versus Team All Hail Megatron. It was very much kind of like, if they're doing this, we've got to show them that this stuff that we're doing, that the original plan is just as strong and just as good. And I think part of that even lends into, there's one of the variant covers to Maxim Dinobots issue 1 is Grimlock punching through the cover to All Hail Megatron. So.
We're going to do something.
But again, it's pathetic because we were on the same side. There's no sides, we were like, we were all, but it was, like, sounds too much of a gent to sort of say, but if you alludes to it, that, kind of having the direction changed was frustrating, and I was most frustrating for him most of all, but it was definitely the artists that were, because we were fans of Simon, we were fans of the direction, we were fans of Transformers in general, and we just were really, it felt like we were giving the Transformers comics that we'd always wanted, like I didn't dislike everything Dreamwave did, but it felt like IDW were they're a comics company. They're not like an IP farm, you know, although they do that as well. But they kind of care, or they definitely did. They all gave us very much kind of carte blanche to kind of do what we wanted with writing characters, but especially with how the characters were designed. And as more and more artists got introduced, they were really good about letting us play to each of our own strengths and stuff. There was no, they could have sort of said, look, EJ is the style of the Bible for this, stick with it. And that would have been a disaster in some ways, because none of us are really Egypt, you know, like even Alex, who kind of works on a very kind of like sort of like well thought out engineering sort of style, it's still a different style, type of detailed transformer. No, IDW were really good about kind of letting people do what they wanted, and that's why the Transformer comics were so strong and they got the license. And that's why I think there was maybe resistance from some of us when they changed tack to all Megatron.
I think now's a good time to sort of open the floor to questions. If anyone has any, you can put your hand up. It's allowed. No? Come on.
There's one over there. I can't see, I'm being blinded by the light.
Yep. How's it going, Nick? First of all, how many trousers did you go through? Shattered trousers, do you think?
Shattered, yeah, I mean, I was on good, sort of, the exchange rate was pretty good at the time, so I was able to go through quite a lot of pants. I mean, trousers, I mean, we quite call pants as well. I don't think that there's no underwear destroyed. Yeah, I was buckling at least one set of seams per series, I suppose. So I think Furman owes me a nice pair of slacks at this stage.
Pennies.
Pennies? Yeah, so pennies, yeah. So we get that. Yeah, I mean, I eventually got like a discount in pennies because I was going in after replaced them so much and stuff. But yeah, no, I did need to get my gussets girded after that, so it's... But no complaints here?
Proper question.
Oh, okay.
By the way, pennies is for American order. We don't call it for government. Just mostly for some, but everybody as well. When you were starting, of course, apart from Spotlight Shockwave, was there a definite, like, we can't do any of the touchstones from Marvel or the cartoon in this storyline? You were actively avoiding those touchstones?
To an extent, I suppose, but again, it was only because we had that credo, if it's been done before, don't do it that way again, and, you know, if it looks like, you know, old Marvel storytelling or scenes, don't do it that way, put a different spin on it. But I still think we were looking for those same iconic moments. I don't think it was that we were trying to avoid, we were just trying to do it slightly differently every time. So, you know, when, you know, Prime finally fights Megatron, you know, you've still got in your mind all those classic encounters, but then you're thinking, okay, what haven't we seen? What could happen here? What aren't we expecting to happen? And so it's just always, and really it's, I would say it's for any comic writing, you know, you don't just rehash, you change it around, you defy expectations, you try and surprise your readers all the time. So I think that was all we were doing. We just didn't want to do exact homages to things, but we did want to capture that same classic war excitement of, you know, Prime versus Megatron in the animated movie or something. You know, you want those, that sort of, I don't know, I mean, they did it so well in that movie, you know, just that sense of two titans who, you know, are just going to fight each other to the death, to the death, oh look. You know,
Very good issue 1 cover by Nick Roche.
it was so casually done though, wasn't it? Throw this guy. But yeah, so, you know, yes, basically, we just didn't want to do any of those things, whereas with Dreamwave, we had done a little bit of straight homaging from the original, like having the fight on the dam in War Within. This time we just wanted to say, there is nothing before, you know, this is the IDW verse, and everything is new.
That level of things can often go, so if it's reminding you of something, it just takes you out of the thing you're trying to read or enjoy. You're sort of like, oh yeah, I remember when this was done better, you know, or this was done with the Stan Bush soundtrack behind it, you know, so it's kind of, you can't compete with that. But that was definitely much the big feeling behind editorial at the early stages of phase 1, of sort of like we're doing it differently. As things kind of went on, that changed to the point that when records came along, like the editorial people, the editors who were in charge of that stage, not bent it at all, but they were sort of like, so you've got records, I don't really know who the records are and stuff like that, so we've got to have this guy in Packer, and I'm like, no, we don't know who he is. But can you make sure Springer and Perceptor and Cup and Ultra Magnus and RC are there? And it was just like, I mean, like, and it's weird because 1986 Transformers movie is my favourite sort of taste of Transformers, but at that stage it was like, Ultra Magnus could be there, but it can't be in it the whole time, and it just makes sense to just suddenly bring RC in the records. I mean, she is a perfect foil for the records, but at that stage in the storytelling, it would have just been, you know, like, so it's, I'm kind of glad that we kind of resisted it for as long as we did, you know, and that if you ever did find, like, those classic pairings, they were being done in different ways, you know. I mean, I would love to have seen Ultra Magnus versus Galvatron fight, but then it just never made sense in IDW, and I'm kind of glad that they didn't find a way to kind of shoehorn it in.
I mean, I think as soon as you start to reference a classic scene from some other iteration, you do take the reader out of the flow of the story. You know, it's supposed to be immersive. It's not supposed to make you go, ah, oh, look, there we go, there's that classic scene, because we didn't want that. We just wanted it, you know, all the time you're reading that story, you're in that story, you're not thinking back to anything else. And that was the thing, we just didn't want, you know, that touchstone all the time. Oh, there's this, there's that. This is just infiltration, escalation, revelation, and you're in that storyline. So we just didn't try to reference.
Thank you very much. Love your work.
Are there any characters that you as a writer or you as artists would have loved to reimagine from the whole Transformers lore but never got the chance to do?
You know, personally, I don't feel like, you know, I mean, I'm kind of glad that I left, you know, the records largely alone for other people to do, because, you know, there were so many other characters that I had such fun exploring maybe more for the first time. You know, like characters like Nightbeat or Hardhead, or these ones that, you know, haven't been there before, so this is more interesting to me. So I don't think there were any I thought, well, I wish I got to so-and-so. I was actually quite happy with all the characters I tackled in my bit of the IDW verse. So no great ones stand out.
No, same here. I think I got my shopping list in, to be honest. Like I said, the 86 guys were kind of my guys. And I got to design Rodimus and the Magnus and the Cup and the Springer, so it's sort of like, who cares about the rest of them? I don't even know the rest of the characters' names, to be honest. No, so I was pretty happy as well. It's kind of, and it's weird, I quite enjoy playing in the sort of the long grass of the kind of the records kind of universe where, like I got to do Prowl and stuff. I didn't get to design him necessarily, but I got to kind of put a stamp on him, like writing wise, and that was a lot of fun. But you know, I found a right spot like Megatron. Scratch that itch for me that I got to write. I got to, like, there's a page where I got like Starscream and Shockwave and Soundwave and Megatron talking, and it's just like especially like records where it's like Iron Fist talks to Rotor Storm. We're like, who are these guys? So yeah, and then like Optimus Prime, who's great, but I don't, because he's the main character in some ways. He's not. It's hard to find a personal connection with him. So I never missed not drawing him too much or writing him or anything like that. So no, I was really, really lucky boy, really. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
There was a very wise man, I think, who once said in relation to Transformers stories, it never ends. Can't think who that guy was, but you know.
We should invite him one of these years and see if he's still around.
Maybe see if we can find him. But anyway, as far as the IDW verse #1 goes, it has ended. But as Regeneration 1 pointed out, it never ends, and sometimes we can go back to these things. So maybe in 10, 15 years, 20, however long it may be, and if you were given the chance to revisit this first IDW verse, for each of you, what's the little plot point or a little character arc or something you'd like to revisit and go back, and see what's happened in the interim and tell a story on?
I mean, personally, I think it would be a real strange thing, to go back into that, and it doesn't feel that there's a great deal missing from the IDW verse. With Transformers '84, the whole thing was, because that that first issue covers so much ground, there were little gaps, or sometimes vast gaps, in the storyline you could fill or pad out or just turn the perspective around on. But I'm not sure how many opportunities there are in the IDW verse, which feels pretty cohesive and you know, wasn't that a bit of a spoiler? Telling them it's finished over? No, there's two more panels.
Yeah, it's like Simon said, yeah, it feels like it's a fairly tight, sort of watertight, sort of, especially with, like, when John and James came along and just started like grouting every gap they could with whatever it was they were writing. Like I said, I didn't read it. But I mean, like, from a pure sort of like, wouldn't it be fun to do? I could always go back to the Wreckers Well. Like, just even if you want to do like a Squadron X thing or something like that, you know. Like, I mean, the thing is about doing kind of like, it's not quite true, especially when Simon has a comic to sell. But the thing about doing kind of prequely sort of stuff is that you kind of know ultimately where all the pieces have to be at the end of it, and it kind of can take away a little bit of the drama. And so that means that any new character that you're meeting, I never met this character before. Oh, that's why, because he dies by the end of it, you know, so she dies by the end of it. So, but I think if they did like a sort of kind of return to phase 1 sort of special, I think I'm sure I could squeeze out a Squadron X 5-pager or something like that. You know, we should do that. Like that thing of Crisis on Infinite Cybertrons, like you said, it's kind of a few years from now we can do into the cyberverse sort of version of Transformers. So, have you got anything that you kind of, you or EJ, anything that you kind of would like to go back to?
For me, I would love to see how Revelation, how it was supposed to, meant to be when originally how Simon was planned.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice, I suppose, to have done the 5th arc, which was supposed to be called Expansion, which was sort of then became obviously other things within, you know, sort of like Heart of Darkness and whatever else. But, you know, there was a whole Dead Universe arc that really just got so compressed, and we never got to do what Expansion was supposed to be. But nowadays I'd have to find whether I ever even wrote down what Expansion was supposed to be.
Yeah. I can't think of anything myself I'd like to kind of like revisit. Maybe it would have been kind of nice, after all in Negatron, that they did a lot of story things in there that were, you know, they damaged Earth quite a lot. But within 3 years, they seem to have managed to get this on their feet quite nicely. But there was things like, I think it was on the Negatron, where Skywarp said that he'd then killed half the population of Beijing. You think, that's got to have some sort of impact, you know? And so it felt like some of the Earth stories could have been a little bit more, you could have seen a bit more what these giant robots have done and to really kind of mix it up a bit. But that's just being picky, really. I think overall, the IDW verse is, the first version at least, is so all-encompassing. And it has been, like you say, all the cracks have been filled pretty much, so it's...
And like, I absolutely wouldn't be, I'm not doing any of it a disservice, but I just think because there's just a bit more cohesive vision at the beginning and at the end, and it's nothing to do with the quality of the stuff in the middle, but it just seemed more from editorially a bit sort of like people just going, is this working? You know, and just not being quite sure, whereas Kris at the time was very much, you know, full, you know, strength behind the guys here, and then kind of once John Barber was around, it felt very much like, because he was co-creating it, and it felt like the stuff that he and James were kind of spearheading, and then Margrave as well. It was, it had, I think that's why there's a singular vision on either end of it that makes both those mini eras stand up, I think.
It definitely works together as a cohesive whole. I think probably better than a great deal of other Transformers continuities. It really does feel like it's bookended, it's got a start, it's got a finish, it's got some really good stuff throughout. It
does, because even stuff that like not everyone received well, because not everyone does, but like there's some people who didn't like All Hit Megatron, some people didn't like the Megatron Origin series. But it's all become essential because everyone's found a way to sort of like make it work. It's like, not that it didn't work, but you know what I mean? It's like there's never an attempt to sort of go, well, this didn't happen, which is kind of,
they at least acknowledged. Even stories that weren't particularly popular, they still acknowledge that.
That's kind of one of the things I like about comics as well, is the stuff that kind of, might not be like something that everyone loves, but you find a way to kind of make it work, or find the angle, or find the connective tissue to keep it together. Yeah, no, I like that about the IDW universe.
So I think the upshot is if you want to see any of these continuations, start pesting editors in about 5 to 10 years' time.
Yeah, we're going to write that regeneration IDW,
Regeneration,
re-infiltration, I don't know, the procrastination, continuation, I don't know.
So, unfortunately, we don't have time for any further questions, so I'd like you all to give our guest a big round of applause. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Soweit das Diskussionspanel zu IDW Infiltration von der TFNation 2019. Es gab noch ein zweites und sogar noch ein drittes Panel. Das dritte habe ich leider nicht gesehen. Das zweite zu Escalation habe ich gesehen und ebenfalls komplett aufgezeichnet. Das gibt es hier für euch auf diesem Kanal am Sonntag. Wenn es euch gefallen hat, gebt mir einen Daumen nach oben, abonniert diesen Kanal für wöchentlich neue Videos rund um Transformers und andere Sammelfiguren. Und bis dahin sage ich vielen Dank fürs Zuhören. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Ciao.